Welcome to the Positive Spiritual Living Podcast, brought to you by Unity on the Bay. This is your positive path for spiritual living.
That was beautiful. As I was listening to those words, the oasis of love, I recognized just how much I want to just lean into that energy, especially with what is going on in the world around me. How nice it is to be able to recognize that there is that oasis of love that is God in our lives, that is within us, so that we can rest in it as we look at what it is for us to do. Now, I want to share with you, as I've been just sort of with the work of Gabby Bernstein in The Universe Has Your Back, I've been really conscious of how the messages from the book itself are sort of living out in my life. And it's just so interesting because one of the themes that I want to share with you today is about the detours. And it just so happened that this week alone, I took 2 wrong turns, at least that I'm aware of. And the first one was I was heading back home, and I turned on a street before the one that I normally turn on, and I kind of beat myself over it. I'm like, oh, why am I doing it this way? And I kept going, and all of a sudden I see this van, one of those dog grooming vans that they have going around now. And I saw it, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I kept going, and then I was like, wait a minute. That's exactly what I need. So I made a U-turn, went back to it, got the phone number, called them. They were there the next day. The second wrong turn I took this week was just yesterday. So I woke up with sewage issues all over my house, and I was cleaning it for like an hour and a half. And so I decided that I wanted to go to Publix and get a little bit more of the liquid that you pour down the drain, right? The Drano. And as I'm heading over to Publix, which is just a few blocks away, and I make that drive once or twice a week, I turned on a street that I never turn on 1 week before the one I normally do. And I go into it, and all of a sudden there is this truck, this septic tank cleanup truck right there in front of me. And so I stopped. I talked to the gentleman, and he was actually at my house just a few hours later to fix my septic tank and get all that taken care of, right? And it's just really interesting to me that as I was really trying to prep myself to share with you about being open to the detours that our lives gives us, that here were these 2 detours, these 2 signs that I received, that in every turn that we make, whether we think it's right or wrong, there is a resource in there for us. I even joked with the septic tank guy. He said, well, you're the second wrong turn I make. I can't wait to turn the wrong way a third time and see what shows up in my life. And we laughed. And, as I was laughing with him, I just thought, wow, if I could only have this experience of joy and laughter, no matter which turn I make. Could I remember just how open and receptive I was to the resources that come to me when I do make a wrong turn? And I sat with that. It made me realize no matter what turns we're making in our lives, there is always something that we can receive from it. There is always something that we can use to lean on when we are willing to accept it, right? And so our work really is to just, from my perspective, be intentional about what it is that we want to receive, be intentional about what it is that we want to experience any turn in our lives that we make. And so I have to tell you, I am feeling that flow in my personal life like you wouldn't believe. And at the same time, as I was putting together this talk, I realized the places where I'm not feeling that same kind of energy driving me is sort of when I look out into the world and I see all the different things that are happening in our community. I'm not as expectant of the good that comes from each turn that we make. And I sit with that, and I realize that there's lots going on, whether it's politics, racial inequality. There's just a lot of heaviness that I'm experiencing outside of myself when I look at that. And I recognize that by no coincidence, I do that, and then all of a sudden I open up the pages of a book that I was using as a resource for today's talk, and I find a quote by Jim Rosemergy, a Unity minister who's been to Unity on the Bay before, and he says, "The things of the outer world give us pleasure, but such pleasure fades away. Knowing God brings a joy that is full." And that makes me pause and realize that I can find joy, I can find purpose in the things that are happening in the world around me. That there is an openness within me to experience a certain level of joy in knowing God more fully through my experiences. I may not like what is going on around me, but that doesn't keep me from fully recognizing that it is an opportunity to know myself and to know God more fully, and that in itself can bring me a sense of peace and a sense of joy as I look out and see what it is for me to do. And so when I look out into the world, I actually see resilience. I see the ways in which we are in this moment cultivating a deep strength, a deep faith. I actually am able to see out into the world and know that there is this great awakening taking place, and that we are building our muscles to be able to push it through, to allow it to emerge in a greater way. And so then I remember that famous, or maybe it's now infamous, Charles Fillmore quote, "I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me today." And so maybe it isn't a sizzle and a zeal about the current state of affairs, but it definitely is a sizzle and enthusiasm for being able to just even recognize in the midst of it all that I can have peace, that I can find joy and love in deeper ways, and that I can find those things within myself. And that then leads me to remember from Lessons in Truth, Emily Cady, one of the founding voices, really, of the Unity philosophy, where she says, "No person or thing in the universe, no chain of circumstances can be by any possibility interpose itself between you and all joy, all good." And so as I remembered those truths, I began to feel a greater sense of peace. I began to feel a greater sense of joy and enthusiasm. And I remembered my first Sunday that I got to speak, my first Sunday talk that I gave, and something came up for me, and I just called it the friendly universe rule. And it said this: you give the universe an inch, and you're going to receive a mile. The tiniest opening for possibility returns so much for us and from the universe into our lives. And I think that's one of the things that Gabby Bernstein is inviting us into in her book, to just recognize that the universe has our back, that as we become just even a tiny bit more open to seeing that, to seeing the ways in which nothing and no one is truly against us, the more we will feel it in expanded ways. And so Gabby says, when you get psyched about something and leave from a place of joy, immediately the universe starts to show you the way. You have the power to align with whatever it is you want to see. Now, I hear that, I remember all these truths, and yet I choose differently sometimes, right? I choose to build a story about what is going on and how it is wrong. And as Gabby also says, the story we build up is what brings us down. And I really sit with that, because there have been moments where I have, in the last few weeks especially, been feeling pretty down, pretty low. And so then it's an opportunity for me to question what it is that I'm believing in order to create this story that continues to give me reasons why I should be down. And how can I change my story It isn't about being blind to what is going on in the world, but it is about maybe having a greater view of what is going on. Because it made me realize, right? Like, if I am only seeing one particular side of a story, I am blind to the other ways in which that story may be showing up for other people. I am blind to seeing other things that may be happening in that same story itself, the same experience. And so how can I be more open to seeing all the experiences from the different storylines? And how could I choose a storyline that, yes, is aware of the things that are going on around me, and yes, calls into the source of my being to be more empowered, to feel joy, to bring joy, to feel peace, to bring peace into the world. And so that's what I invite you to look at. How is it that your story is bringing you down? And is there a way that you can change your story so that you can feel empowered to be the change, to be the expression of good in the world? Maria Namath, who's this wonderful teacher, she has this great book called The Energy of Money. In it, she talks about how, we can leak money through like small unconscious expenses, right? And so just like that, we can also lose physical energy with small unconscious expenditures of fear and worry. And that we have to have a watchful eye, an attentive eye, so that we can look at the ways in which our energy is leaking, so that we may be able to stop the drain of that energy and patch it up. For me, I'm being invited to look at my stories so that I can patch up the stories, and I am able to be intentional about the ways in which I want to experience myself within the experiences. And that truly is the first step in claiming our power, reclaiming our power. Because that's what it's about, knowing that within us is the ability to not only know God more fully, but to express God more fully. I can be empowered to be the expression of God, to allow this Christhood that I am, whatever you call it, the Buddha nature, the divinity within me, within you, to be more fully known by others. And so that is the first step, to be able to be intentional about how you want to see your experiences. Be determined to see with the eyes of love, says Gabby Bernstein. Once you have made that choice to see through the eyes of love, she then invites us to let our feelings navigate our path. And so the reality is that our feelings are already navigating our paths. Our feelings that are bringing us down, for sure, are continuing to support our path towards feeling down. The moment that we are able to identify what is it that we want to feel. So I'm feeling down, I'm feeling anxiety, I'm feeling fear in this moment. Well, what is it that I do want to feel? I want to feel love. I want to feel hope. I want to feel faithful. I want to be faith-filled. The moment that we identify it and we claim it, we start being pulled by it to a different maybe step along the way, a different journey. And to be able to know that we are on the right journey, I love that Gabby invites us to ask for a sign. Just ask for a sign, like universe, loving universe that is working for my good, show me that I'm on the right path. And she's very clear about being specific. So I have to tell you, this morning when I was putting together the service, I decided there's something that I've been needing to sort of reimagine for myself. And so I decided to be very clear about the sign that I want to see in the next few days to know that it is for me to do. So ask for clear signs. And the fourth one is to really turn it over to the universe and to be patient, because those signs may take a while to show up, right? The path may become clear only after a short while or a longer while. And we have to really recognize when we're becoming impatient. As I was thinking about this morning, I realized one of the things that I actually am trying to teach our son Lucas is patience, because he can be very impatient. Let me tell you There is nothing more impatient than me when I'm trying to teach my son patience. I lose it. And so I really am sitting with, where does that impatience come from? A lot of times that is really just a desire to control. It is a lack in for me, at least in that experience, a lack of faith that he'll get it. A lack of faith that I'm doing it the right way. A lack of faith, right? And so I have to take a step back and just trust. Trust the process, trust the experience, trust the ways in which I'm showing up, which is really the way in which the universe is showing up through me. And then the fifth step that Gabby gives us is to welcome creative possibilities. And for me, that can be scary. Because if they don't follow a particular process or a particular path, I just get a little anxiety over it, because I do like to have a sense of control. But then I think about the ways in which there is point A and point B, and so many different ways of getting to point B. And if you're like me, we now have our GPS systems on our phones when we're driving, and I'm on Waze. And yes, sometimes it is from point A to point B, the same path that we've always taken, or a straight line. But sometimes the GPS changes, right? Like sometimes you're going one way and all of a sudden it tells you, actually, you're going to want to go this way instead. And at those times, I find that I don't question it. I just follow that GPS system as trusted for knowing the best way to get there. But in my life, when there is a detour, I do question it. I don't trust it as much. What if I can start looking at my experiences and my own path in the same way with that GPS system? And that GPS system being the universe itself. It is telling me maybe it'll take a little bit longer, but you won't be in as much traffic. There won't be as much busyness in it. Maybe it'll be a longer distance, but you'll get there quicker, whatever it may be. And so to be open to trusting that, to really have faith that the universe knows, and that that divine intelligence is showing up through that experience. And in that way, obstacles and detours really are pointing us in the right direction. We can allow the universe, that GPS, to redirect our path. And I sit with knowing that I, one, want to continue to be on my personal path, and two, there are ways in which I want the redirection of the path that our communities, that our countries are taking to take place. Now, some of you may remember this story that I've shared before. It was a little bit of a detour that I took. I was in the process of purchasing my first home, and I went into this program for first-time home buyers. Everything was set. I was already told which programs I would be allowed to go into. I was going to get all these different kinds of support towards the purchasing of my new home. And I was supposed to show up on a Monday with the additional paperwork that they required, and we would all be settled, and I could start looking for a home. Well, the weekend, right before that Monday, all of a sudden, I start getting all these credit cards that have been opened up in my name. And it was like, I can't remember if it was like $11,000 in 12 credit cards or $12,000 in 11 credit cards. But the thing was, my identity was stolen. And so I show up on Monday and I just let them know what happened. And they said, I'm sorry, but this is a detour. You're going to have to take care of that before we can approve you into the programs to purchase your home. So I had to clean that up. It took me a couple of months, but then I showed up to the office again, and lo and behold, the woman that was helping me just said, well, thank God this happened, that you had this detour, because last week a new program showed up. We are literally going to gift you $30,000 towards the purchase of your new home. You will never have to pay that money back at all. It is free money. So that detour, which I did trust at that moment, really brought a deeper sense of abundance into my life, really allowed me to recognize the ways in which I could trust God in deeper, prosperous ways. And that was a miracle. but we're miracle makers. We are here to experience miracle after miracle. So let us have a miracle mindset and expect our good. Maybe we don't know fully how it's going to show up. Maybe there are going to be detours along the way, but we can still trust the universe as our ultimate GPS. And we can still take back our own power to feel empowered to be the change that we want to see. So yes, I can see that there are many obstacles or maybe detours that are being taken place, and there may be some additional detours that we'll have to take. I can trust that the point B, where we are heading, is to experience God more fully. And maybe we may even recognize that the point B that we had put into the GPS wasn't even where we really wanted to go. Yes, to a new home. Yes, to a loving relationship. But overall, it was yes, to know ourselves as divine, to know that the universe had our back. I leave you with this quote from Charles Fillmore. I refuse to be anxious about tomorrow or even the next minute. I know that God does provide for the fulfillment of God's divine idea. And I am that divine idea. You are a divine idea in the mind of God. Know that the universe has your back. Let go of the fear. Move into an experience of faith. Our destinies are to be fulfilled. Thank you and have a beautiful day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Positive Spiritual Living Podcast, brought to you by Unity on the Bay, a spiritual community located in Miami, Florida. Unity on the Bay is supported by the generosity of its community. If you'd like to make a donation or learn more about Unity on the Bay, please visit unityonthebay.org. You can also follow Unity on the Bay on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for even more positive spiritual inspiration. Until next time, thanks for listening and many blessings. Namaste.